very much, Tika. Next, we'll be having a panel session hosted by Matt Godfrey, President of Y&R for Asia. The panel is Transforming Brands. The panelists include Robert Gilby, Managing Director for Southeast Asia at the Walt Disney Company, Paul Henaghan, President, South Asia and Korea at Dell EMC, Susan Jain, CMO for APAC at IBM, and Tanay Misra, Global Brand Director for Unilever. Please put your hands together.
Not as into
Good morning, Singapore. Thank you to NUS, IDMA, and the Unbound innovfest crew. Amazing turnout today, and thank you for all your support. We're up here on stage with 4 of the world's greatest brands. For well over 300 years, they've been disrupting and innovating in their category. And you don't become that successful and for that long without truly understanding collaboration, transformation, partnerships, and innovation, and all the topics that we heard about today. So we're going to start, I think, with our friend here from Rob from Disney, whose business has been innovating since 1923. And you think about the entertainment landscape back then, you think about what's going on now, and this company has been a powerhouse for all those years. Rob, can you tell us a little bit about how Disney views transformation, disruption, innovation, and partnerships, in particular context to even your accelerator programs that you have running around the world, and how it applies to here in Asia?
Sure, thanks, Matthew. As you rightly said, innovation has been the core of Disney since the beginning. Walt Disney created the first animated feature film in 1937, Snow White, and our Pixar division created the first computer-generated animated film in 1995, Toy Story. So innovation has been something that has been the heart of our business, built around particularly storytelling. And so the way we kind of keep that going is to look for hubs or clusters of innovation. We try to keep that process smaller groups who can get together and focus on particular aspects of innovation. So for example, we have a group called Disney Research that have teams in Zurich and Shanghai and other cities around the world who just focus on the scientific research. They're all sort of PhDs from great institutions, and they're not really focused on application. They're just focused on future technologies. We have a team at the theme park called the Imagineers. Imagine ears. And their sole goal is to think about and imagine new rides and possibilities, first from a customer experience, and I may come back to that a little later on. What is that guest experience? And then design the most innovative, the great experience, as a ride. Closer to home, here in Southeast Asia, we've worked very closely with the IMDA, which I sit on the board of as well, to look at the innovation spaces. And I think creating a location and an opportunity to put yourself in the place of most potential, I think is really, really keen. So the Pixel building that you heard Hal talk about earlier on brings together gaming companies, gaming solution centers. It has YouTube influencers that can get together there. And we took Maker Studios, which is a company we bought, which brings together a network of creators and influencers online and YouTube. We put our Maker Studios team there. We put our film studio digital marketing team in the same location and said, this is a hub. You sit alongside these teams, and you come up with new campaigns, new initiatives, new content creation for the new platforms. And you're over the road from our main office, but you're not part of our main office. So how do we create an environment, a cluster, for people to get together and think of new ideas? Lastly, very quickly on the accelerator program. So in the US, we launched an accelerator program. I will say it's global. So if any of you do want to apply to the next round, it's available to any of you. The accelerator program takes just maybe like a cohort of 10 companies each year. And it really focuses on how can we contribute, like any kind of accelerator, how can we contribute to their next phase of growth? We invest some capital, $120,000. It can be converted to equity at the choice of the company. But most importantly, I think this is the part where we see the most value is we tie it to mentoring programs with our key executives. That's why there's a lot of time spent with the LA executives. And out of that comes new opportunities. So one of the best examples, we had a company called Sphero that they had a magnetic application to robotics. And our global CEO, Bob Iger, saw their technology and said, I need you to create the new droid for the next Star Wars film, The Force Awakens. And they worked with us on the technology for the actual film, and then we converted that into a commercial release of a toy. So those of you who saw The Force Awakens may have seen BB-8, the little sphere which rotates, but the head stays in place, and you can control it via your iPad app. Sphero, as a company, didn't have a commercial launch plan for some of that technology. But because we loved the technology, we saw a commercial opportunity to launch it, we supported them, and it became an opportunity, mainly because we had that connective tissue of an accelerator program.
Fantastic stuff. And thank you for rebooting the Star Wars franchise. There's nerds all around the galaxy who are thankful for Disney for all of that. Susan, you've seen both sides of the fence, and working in a company, IBM, which started in 1911, is still transforming the world today. Yeah. What advice would you have for seeing both sides, having been on the startup side and then being in the MNC side? How do you see collaboration working? What are some of the advice you'd give to the startups in the room here?
Sure. First of all, I'd start by saying congratulations, because there's nothing more exciting than being an entrepreneur. Scary, intimidating sometimes, but entrepreneurialism is the fountainhead of innovation and growth. I truly believe that. So when I came out of university with 4 other people, and we started a company in space that we affectionately called the Mouse Room, I never imagined that I would be somewhere like here. And I'm so proud to be here today because, my individual journey included 2 startups. It included a multinational that was in the process of failing, and then IBM, whom anecdotally I had consulted to about how to work with entrepreneurs. So I keep coming back to this idea, and there's no better place to be for that than technology, I think. Because in the technology industry, if you are not constantly innovating, you're not there. You're not 105 years old as we are. So my advice is to know your value and be authentic to it and share it. Because value is something that organizations of all sizes have, whether they're 5 people, such as my first organization, or over 300,000, such as IBM. Authenticity, value, sharing is at the root of partnership and ultimately of success.
Okay, thank you. Paul, Dell is the quintessential garage startup, and the only brand here on the floor which has still got the founder at the helm, and he has described Dell as the world's largest startup. Does that culture make it easier to collaborate with startups, give you more affinity in that space? And how does Dell approach collaboration to help continually transform your business?
Yeah, it's funny. People all understand that Michael Dell, in his dorm room back in 1984, kind of built a PC, which then created this direct shipment model. But what we don't understand is, in fact, he learned a very, very valuable lesson when he first did it, in the sense that he was building PCs for his college mates. But his true business was he was actually formatting hard disk drives. And one day he invited a customer in, and he tells the story of how this customer was coming in, wanted to see the premises because he was going to place an order for some disk drives. And they were paranoid. They were trying to make this look like a real, official business environment, etc. And the customer walked in and looked at the drive being connected to one of the PCs that Michael had built and said, "What's that?" And Michael explained that was a PC he'd put together. And he said, "Well, can you build me 10 of those?" And that's what started it. The principle behind that Michael learned is that listening to your customer, listening to those outside of your world, is what really drives innovation. And he's continued that right the way through to where we are today. People talk about us being a private organization and the flexibility that gives us to innovate and invest, and we do. The company spends, and I know it's scary numbers in the context of the world we live in today, but $4.5 billion a year, to your point, on R&D. However, that investment is only one part of it. What really drives the innovation is the engagement we have with the wider ecosystem in which we operate. And the active encouragement that we have, and I'll just give you a great example. We have something called DWEN, which is Dell Women's Entrepreneurial Network. And we started this about 8 years ago, where we bring women together, entrepreneurial women together, in a forum, and the next one is in San Francisco in July, and I'm very pleased to say we've got a solid representation of women entrepreneurs from this part of the world attending. And it's a forum to engage with the community, to create an environment for people to share, even going to the extent of things like raising funding, etc. And out of that spun last year, we did it in Cape Town, and the women highlighted that one of the challenges they face is how do you represent your idea, your concept, your thought, to funders, to investors, etc. And I'm sure we've all heard of Shark Tank, which is that horrible, I say horrible because it's a brutal process you go through to go try and raise funding. So the woman decided what we would call it is Dolphin Tank. And we have Dolphin Tank now, and we've run one in Cape Town, which is a forum to come in, represent your ideas, and in front of a panel, and the panel gives guidance as to how you can actually take that to the organizations you're focused on, or the market, etc. And we've now run that in Sydney this year very successfully, and most recently here in Singapore. And it's through this engagement that, you know, the spirit of what Michael Dell created, what he continues to create today, you know, the greatest advantage we have as a company is not being private, it's the fact that we're still run by Michael Dell.
Interesting. And Tanay, you were telling me you work on a brand that was 1894?
Yeah.
1894. So well over 120 years worth of innovation, and still very strong, one of the best brands in the region. But at the same time, Unilever is powerfully innovating with programs like the Foundry and Level 3 here at Mapletree. Can you tell us a little bit about how Unilever keep on the cutting edge of innovation by partnering with people, companies, startups, and disruptors?
Yeah. So I think for Unilever, because Unilever touches and serves more than 2 billion consumers worldwide every day, it's really about getting the founder's mentality back in the business. Come to think of it, in 1890, Lord William Lever saw a real problem in the world. He saw that consumers or people at that time in Victorian England were suffering from cholera, and there was no viable solution. And he started a startup which is called Lifebuoy, the soap, which eventually became a big part of Unilever and is now the company that it is. Now, how do we keep looking out for problems or ways in which we can make consumers' lives better, serve them better? And that's really the heart of what the gene or the DNA of a innovator is. And part of the Foundry experiment or the initiative is get that DNA back in. Because if you're not constantly looking out for ways to solve or serve consumers, I think innovation stops. And that's really the heart of why the Foundry and many such initiatives are there. I think once you interact with people who are looking at the world in a different way, it opens up your own horizons towards how to either solve new problems or serve in better ways, or just do things differently. So it's probably as simple as that for us.
Okay. And so we all have programs against them. I'm sure we have successes. And whenever you go to a startup organization, there's usually a sign up that says fail fast. And fail fast sometimes is not a great ethos in a large MNC. Sometimes that's a bit of a culture clash. And Telstra recently did a survey amongst Singapore, and most MNCs only found about 40% chance of success. And they also found that people who had success were moderating their expectations. Do you think there's a culture clash between MNCs and startups, the desire to move fast, and the MNC's desire to make sure we minimize risk and maximize shareholder value? Throw it out to whoever would like to grab.
Well, I think there's a healthy friction, and that's part of the beauty of it. When you bring together who have core principles in common around talent, innovation, growth, but have different perspectives. It's like having diversity in an organization, you know.
So you think it's absolutely fine and that there's no risk whatsoever, it's just something to be managed?
Well, it's somewhat like dating, I think. You know, sometimes it leads to marriage and sometimes it doesn't, but you know, the process itself is always valuable because of the learnings.
I think then for the startup point of view, though, that dating process is fine because you've got capital and money and time. If I was a startup, I'm not sure I've got the capital, the money, and the time to go through this dating process. So how do you kind of play it on both sides to make sure that people get a two-way value out of the collaboration and you're not just wasting entrepreneurs' valuable time and money by just having an exploration? How do you fine-tune who should talk to you, who should engage with you, so it's for mutual benefit?
Well, I think there's a bit of a balance that goes on. You know, there's a risk being a startup. You don't have all the capital, you have to proof of concept, you have to scale your customer base. There's all the usual challenges that come with a startup. And there's risk and challenges of being a large organization of, you know, how do you transition your existing businesses? So there's risk either way. But I think we don't always think of it as fail fast, because why do you start with an assumption you're going to fail? Why don't we talk about learning fast? As part of learning, you fail sometimes. And you have to be able to accept that failure, learn really quickly, move on, and try and make it right. And I think when we talk about the conversations between large corporates and startups, often there's I guess, an expectation that one is right and one is wrong. I don't think there is a right or wrong. I think it is a conversation where you're trying to share the success and share the risk and work out how you can best bring that together. And you know, you have to take some risks. You're not going to be able to grow your new businesses. You're not going to be able to navigate this digital transformation that we're all talking about without taking some risks. But it's about balancing those risks.
Okay. I'd just say that when I look at it, if you look at the scale of this event and the number of people in this room, if you said to me that 40% of the relationships developed are successful, I think that would be a pretty good rate. So first of all, I think that's a good result. Secondly, I think that the driver behind it, and I had some experience back in the very late 90s of building an e-commerce organization in my own right. And one of the things I learned as I engaged, in fact, with IBM, was to be very, very clear in what my expectations were of the relationship and what their expectations were of me as a startup. And through that, we recognized where we had differences and whether those differences we could overcome or whether, in fact, they caused us to break early. I mean, embracing and understanding quickly, learning, and then moving on either in the relationship or outside of it, I think is critical. Okay. But back to it, 41%? I think that's a good result.
You'd take that win, wouldn't you?
I would take that.
There's a casino next door. I'm not sure we'll get that odds at the casino. Today, we talked a little bit about Rob's view of global centers of excellence. You're all global brands. How do you see Singapore fits into that ecosystem compared to other places like Tel Aviv, India, Berlin, Austin, Texas, etc.? You know, how do you see Singapore emerging as a place to get innovation ideas that can transform Unilever's business?
I think Singapore for Unilever is a big hub. It's one of our biggest global centers, both in terms of just the diversity of talent and brands and also our innovation processes. So definitely it's something big on Unilever's agenda. But globally as well, I think Singapore is amongst the top 10 most innovative places. It's up there with Berlin, Tel Aviv, India, so Bangalore. We see a lot of proactive government initiatives like Smart Nation, which are promoting entrepreneurship. Of course, there's a fundamental cultural difference across centers, and that comes across also in consumer insights and cultural insights. There's this concept of the Maslow's hierarchy for the West versus Asia, and there are fundamental differences that you see in what people are seeking, and that manifests itself into how startups approach. So I think it's just a different DNA to startups here, but we certainly see it as a big center for a lot of future growth. So it's a big hub.
And you were talking a little bit before about your brand's desire to think big and big scale. Do you find startups are thinking at the same scale to collaborate with you? Are they coming to you with big ideas, or are they coming to you with small solutions? And do they get the message that you need to dream big to deal with your brands?
So I'll give an example of think big. We all understand the Avatar movie. So the concept of Avatar was in the producers' heads probably 10 years before the film was actually made. And one of the challenges they had is the technology just wasn't able to keep up, or wasn't able to deliver to the expectations they have of the vision. So it really was a think big project. And we've all heard of Moore's Law. And if you look at Moore's Law, 18 months, if you extract that out, what it says is every 5 years, we've got 10 times the improvement in performance. That 10 years meant in that 10, we went from where we were when the idea was initiated and the conversation with our organization about how we might do this, in working with them to where 10 years later, we had 100 times the power in terms of the server technology, the network, the storage, et cetera, that enabled them to create Avatar. The message behind that is that the vision and the idea was in the entrepreneur's head that was brought to the organization to say, here's what I want to do. And through that, we were able to support that and the continuous advancements in technology to help them realize that vision of movie. And by the way, I'm told 2 and 3 are just mind-blowing with what the technology is going to deliver to us. A great example of thinking big.
And Susan, do you find that at the Watson Center, people coming with big ideas here in Singapore, and is it designed to reinvent the world?
Absolutely, and if you know, the earlier comments about digital being at the core of everything, by definition, you know, it creates scale instantaneously. And so without the kind of limitations that perhaps existed 10, 15 years ago when Avatar was done. We worked with a company in India recently who produced some very high-level media that took 11,000 man-years, if I'm not mistaken, worth of computing time, but because it was done on a cloud, it was done in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
I forget the number of hours or days. So, you know, scale is today what you want it to be, I think, and that's part of the beauty. On level 42 at MBFC, you know, we interact every day with organizations large and small, and in fact, we're going to have a group of Singapore media techs there on Monday, so very proud to be hosting that. And if there are any media techs who aren't going to be there, drop by the session this afternoon on aging, and you could find out more.
And all of you have worked all around the world, Boston, India, sort of places in America. But now that you're here, now that you're in Singapore, and looking after some of these great brands, what ambition do you have to take Singapore innovation or innovation from this world and take it to the world for your brands? So can you transform not just your business here in Asia, which you're responsible for, but do you think your business can lead the way and show the other markets of the world what great innovation and transformation is? Do you see that capability coming from this market?
I'll start with yes. Here's the answer. Look, there's no monopoly on good ideas.
Yep.
You know, and I think the idea of getting smart people together to think about, to dream big, is the key. If you look at the size of this event this year and how quickly it's grown over the last few years, that shows you that here in Singapore you have the potential to bring people together. And, you know, we often talk about government as if it is something bad, something watching out over us, something restricting us. But in reality, what you've got here is you've got a government funding an environment, creating an environment for people to have the conversations. Many of the, you know, my fellow panelists here are encouraged, supported, and attracted by a government that says, look, come and create an environment for Singaporeans, for people from Asia, from people all around the globe to sit in Singapore and just come up with great ideas, to do some great things here. And we don't look at ourselves as an American company. We look at ourselves as a global company. We love our American heritage. We started in the US. We're very proud of our US history. But we're a global company. And so some of the best ideas are coming outside the US, and we're working with our US colleagues as how we can get that two-way sharing going. And I think that's where Singapore's creating the environment, you know, with our panelists, with all of the people in this room, to have that conversation. And you won't know which idea, but something's going to break out and go global.
Anybody else on the same point?
We'll say yes, too, in the area we're particularly excited about from Singapore and see amazing potential is blockchain and fintechs. So IBM invested in opening its first fintech hub in the world here in Singapore, and we're very proud of that, and a lot of hard work, and it seems to be catching on. So, you know, the potential is there, and we believe in it and are investing in that area as well as others.
And on a brand level, so there's lots of examples of how to transform your business, your supply chain, some of the ways you go to market. On a brand level itself, how do you use your brand to attract people in? Or how are you expecting startups and innovators and collaborators to help transform your brand itself? And do you make a distinction on that? Or do you think actually transformation is just part of the business ecosystem and the brand itself shouldn't be actually played with by startups and innovators? It's a very separate concept. So how do you distinguish between brand and if you like, business transformation?
I think I can share the Lifebuoy experience. The common platform we found is the purpose that drives the brand and people with similar purpose. And there are lots of people in the world who want to make a difference to the world. Sustainability and just doing good for society is at the heart of Unilever and many of the brands. So Lifebuoy's mission, for example, is a very simple mission of saving lives and preventing infections. And we did it by making a soap 120 years ago. We might do it by some other means 50 years or 20 years later. So the means is an end towards the purpose. And there are many innovators who I've been pleasantly surprised to hear are interested in making the world a better place, serving these huge missions and purposes that exist in many parts of the world. For example, why should we accept the fact that people or kids are dying because they don't have access to proper hygiene? That's a crime in today's world. It's sort of unacceptable. You know, we're dreaming of colonizing Mars, but on Earth we are losing 3-4 million kids a year. So there are people who are moved by these missions and want to do something about it. And I think that's where this collective purpose and journey will go. I don't know what Lifebuoy will be 40 years later, but surely the mission and the purpose will stay alive, and I think that's what's exciting. That's what keeps us interested in partnering with people who might have bigger, better ideas. So,
yeah. Just, you know, one of the things, of course, we love is our brands associated with innovative technology. But that's not enough. You know, the mantra in the organization is human progress. We also have a very strong program called Change for Good. And within that, we have employee resource groups that support it. So innovation's one. And I'll give you a great example for which I'm extremely proud of and the impact it has in this part of the world. There's a 15-year-old girl in the US who wrote a science paper as part of her STEM within school. And it talked about the fact, she lived in Texas, how unfortunate it was that the plastics in the ocean and the world, if put together, would cover the entire state of Texas. And this was a real problem. Surely we could use this plastic. What this did is it drove, an individual brought this through the innovation group we have within inside the company, brought it into our leadership. And last year we announced an initiative where we would take the plastic out of the ocean, recycle it, and use it for the packaging of our new XPS 13 unit. We set ourselves a goal of 2020 to take 50 million tons per year out of the ocean. We actually achieved it in January of this year. When you consider that the 5 top countries impacted by this is here in this part of the world, this 15-year-old girl kicked off a massive initiative for which we're now putting a lot of investment, a lot of time and effort to drive it through. And that's what our brand should be about.
Fantastic.
We're very much, brand is at the heart of what we do, and we have a set of values. The values haven't changed, just how do we use technology and the various platforms to connect with people. So I mentioned earlier that Snow White was the first animated film in 1937, so 80 years ago. This year we released Beauty and the Beast as a film in cinemas. So that's great, that's a more traditional film world. But what we also did, for example, to kind of stay relevant as a brand, we partnered in the Philippines with the mobile operator Globe, and we found our YouTube influencers to host a reality show for young girls in the Philippines to aspire to be a princess, but not dress up as a princess, but the princess's values. So Cinderella's values of have courage and be kind. Merida's values about being brave. And so the applicants were a girl who wanted to be a vet, one who wanted to be an animator, and one who wanted to be the president of the Philippines. And so we ran this online webisode-driven program supported by a mobile operator, moderated and hosted by an online YouTube influencer to create an eventual end event that, actually they all won because everyone's a winner with Disney. And we use these new platforms to stay relevant as a brand. So there's a young generation of kids who consume media and entertainment content very differently than they did 80 years ago, but they still see something relevant to their world. And that's, staying relevant as a brand, working out how we use technology to stay relevant is where we spend a lot of our time. We don't want the brands to become less important.
And big companies are often hard to access. You don't know quite where to go in, you don't know the right door to knock on, there's so many people, and you can get a lot of false leads. When you get through that door, you may not even have the solution they're looking for. What are the things that keep your brands and business up at night, where if I was out there and I was a startup, I could go, wow, I've got something that could help that. So looking out across Asia, what are the sorts of things where you go, wow, if I could only do this a little bit better, I could actually just nearly 10x my business. So give some people some idea of some of the spaces that you're thinking about or trying to play in to get better innovation, better transformation, or better growth. Who would like to start? I think Susan's keen.
Well, part of the beauty of technology is the ability to share it.
Yeah.
And when you think about Watson in artificial intelligence or blockchain, as I mentioned, where we've contributed 40,000 lines of code, not written by me, obviously, but the sharing creates an opportunity for greater collaboration and greater innovation. And I think that's part of the beauty of not only the technology industry, but ideally the world that we work in. So that excites me and makes me want to get up in the morning and do something different, or engage maybe with one of you to do something that we never thought of before, because the ideas are unlimited.
I think if you look at digital transformation, every major corporation is facing the challenge of digital transformation today. And I think one of the most unfortunate aspects of it, excuse me, is that we measure our success against our peers or our competitors. We don't measure our success against the customer engagement. And I think that the startup community has a far closer view, a far closer relationship to what the end user, the customer demands. And the payment infrastructure, for example, in financial services is a great example. This quarter alone, we've seen MasterCard, Visa, and Amex all announce exceptional results, growth results. The reason they've done that is because at the front end of the payment ecosystem, there's been some incredible innovation around how to leverage that card infrastructure that's been driven by the startup to fintech mentality. Yeah. And that's great today because, and these guys they all look really strong in terms of their performance. But what's really happening is that disintermediation between the corporation and the customer has been driven by this startup community. And ultimately, if you look at payments, for example, we'll bypass the traditional card-based infrastructure. That makes it easy today. But when we move to peer-to-peer, when we move to blockchain technologies, it's fundamentally going to disrupt these guys. So really understanding what's going on at the customer end is a gap we in the large corporate world have. And it's all very well patting ourselves on the back because we're meeting them where our competitors are at, or we're beating them, but that's not enough.
Okay.
I think again, I'll come back to Unilever and how we're looking at, again, sustainability. I just feel each time we mine out and we're not wedded to a particular process of innovation, although we've known one for the past many years, is what is the way of generating more and more ideas towards many of the same problems. Water scarcity is one of them. Lack of hygiene is another. Lack of nutrition. And that's where we realize that if you tap into so-called innovation hubs, which need not be the traditional ones we've known, but also mining consumer insights. For example, very recently we realized a boy in a village in Nigeria had invented a soap which required almost no water. And that was innovation, and that was only because we were willing and open to listen. Now, I'm sure there are millions of such innovations happening every day because it's driven out of necessity. There are conditions on this planet where things are different. And if we're able to mine that out, I think that's really about the innovation culture that eventually will ensure our success.
Okay. Awesome. Now, I think we're quite close to coming to the end of our time. So what I thought would be interesting is maybe just to run down the panel and final kind of words from each of you of what advice would you give to the startup community here in Singapore, given that you've seen where it's come, where it is now, where should they go in the future? What sort of expectations do you have to really kind of make this place, this country, and the businesses here at the forefront of innovation in at least the region, if not the world? What ambition would you give people on how to think about our businesses and our brands so that the future actually will be stronger, and every time we come back to this event, it's bigger and better than before?
That's a lot of things to do in a wrap-up. Focus on a couple of things. If you're a startup, you have to have passion for what you're doing. You know, whether you're seeking investment, whether you're seeking strategic partners or customers, you're going to have passion for what you do. And it's not going to be easy. There's been challenges, so you're going to need the resilience to overcome that. So the passion will be the thing that drives you. What we look for most is really good quality products. You can do good design, good product, good guest customer experience. More than anything, that's a kind of key thing that we're looking for in our partners. And then I guess the method to do that is really down to talent, people. You know, it's not just the experience, it's your conviction, it's your belief, it's how you can tell your story, and how convinced you are that you can make this successful. I've seen very rational executives at our own company and others be swayed by very strong storytellers who are passionate and have conviction about the potential of their product. So those are the kind of things that we look for. And in Singapore, you can do that because this is a hub of excellence. So you should really focus on quality. Quality is the best business model.
Okay, good advice. Susan.
Hard to top that. But I'd go back to what I said at the beginning, which is, you know, as I think of it, KYV, know your value, and don't be afraid to express it. And the fit may be there with one large organization or may not be, but in the end, there's boundless opportunity in a digital world, and you know, we're very proud to be a part of it and very proud to be here in Singapore.
Thank you. Paul.
I think there's three P's to it, and the advice I would give, and certainly passion's the first. You know, that is so important in terms of the journey that you're embarking upon, having passion. But secondly, perseverance. You know, there are obstacles and there are challenges that you're going to face. But that perseverance based on the passion, the foundation of passion, is critical. And the third one is take a punch. And what I mean by that is you're going to get knocked down. You're going to get a blood nose. There are going to be areas where you'll find it inconceivable that the person you're talking to has no idea about why your vision is so compelling. So take the punch, because for every punch you take, I tell you there's a few that are going to miss, and that'll open the door.
I have the last mover's advantage. But I think I agree with all the points that the panel has already added. The only one I would add is aligning objectives. Because by definition, MNCs have a very different business model than startups. You know, MNCs are looking to minimize risk. Startups inherently built in huge risk. So the business models will never align, and I think that's for a good reason. But if we can agree on the objectives, I think it makes the conversation, the journey much easier. And I think it's a two-way process. It's not just the startups having the owners. Even businesses need to agree on the end objective. You know, we're used to doing work in a certain way. So I think agreeing on that objective is critical. It ensures at least one common language as the two sort of journeys somewhere deliver towards a common objective.
Okay, thank you. Well, on behalf of Innovfest, Unbound, and all the partners here, I'd like you to thank Rob, Susan, Paul, and Tanay from four of the world's best brands for taking the time here and share their thoughts. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference. They're around over the next 2 days if you want to grab them, pick their brains, or if you've got a great idea which will transfer the business, get your pitch deck ready and sell. So congratulations for everybody here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Matt Godfrey and his panel of powerful brands and their fearless leaders.